all that so many times.
This is going to be great. Oh, right. Right. Perfect. We're good there. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Twins Talking Up podcast. Actually, let's start that one over again. I apologize, Dan. I stole your thunder. That was my brother's lead intro, not mine. That's what happens when you're twins. Sometimes you want to try to grab from each other. Dan, that's your leadway, not mine. I apologize.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, ready? Whenever you are.
Are you a leader who's known to be quiet, reserved, or shy? The reality is in your mind. You believe that you're amazing and engaging when you choose to be. You get charged being alone. You get drained when you're around a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of interactions and social interactions. Maybe you just might be an introvert. Can an introvert be an effective leader? Our next guest is a fellow podcaster who is a self-professed introvert. Godwin Chan is the host of the Digital Introverts Podcast, where introverts share their success and failure stories and discuss how they thrive in the digital age. Godwin Chan is the host of the Digital Introverts Podcast. As we stated earlier, Godwin, welcome to our program.
Perfect. Glad to be here. And thank you for the great energetic introduction, even on a Saturday.
We're definitely glad to have you here, Godwin. Thank you so much for joining our Twins Talking Up platform. And you and I've met. We're both entrenched in the podcasting world. We're connected with so many different leaders. And when the two of us first met, I instantly thought, I've got to have Godwin on our show. We've got to get him on, because so much of our practice as coaches, and at least with DSB Leadership Group and the clients that I have, I'll tell you, some of my best clients are introverts. And I was blown away when you start thinking about how companies and businesses can praise the extroverted qualities, quote unquote, but realize that there are so many great leaders out here who are self-professed introverts, and that we can really learn so much from them. So Godwin, what led you to begin your podcast that you've entitled Digital Introverts? And was this more a reflection of your background as a digital marketer, your personality and energy type? What led you to start Digital Introverts?
Sure. So, I'll start the story where it kind of really originated in 2019 when I was first starting to write this book. It's basically a place where it was, originally supposed to be a memoir. I wanted to explain my own story of overcoming extreme shyness, social anxiety, low self-esteem, that kind of thing. And it expanded to include the stories of other introverts as well. As I was having these conversations, I was, blown away by the type of quality of conversations I was having there. And, at the same time, 2019 was the year when I first got into podcasting, right? And so, or listening to podcasts, and the very first podcast I ever listened to was How I Built This by Guy Raz. Still so super into that, business niche and, entrepreneurship and, that kind of thing. So, cycle through those podcasts regularly. But in any case, I thought it would be a good idea to put the two together, put the book on a bit of a hold, at that time. And I was like, okay, why don't I just record conversations and upload them to the internet? That's what a podcast is, right? And I figured out very quickly that there is a learning curve to it, and figured out that couple months, and started recording episodes in January of 2020. So this is last year. If you're listening to this in 2300, and started releasing episodes in March of 2020. When first wave of COVID was coming around, and thought, perfect time. Why not? I had more time, more quote unquote free time at home. So I was like, okay, let's just do it. So I've been recording for over a year, or doing the podcast for over a year now. I've recorded episodes with over 220 people now, as of the date of this recording, which is May 22nd, 2021. And it's been an incredible journey, just learning from the very best out there, and looking forward to having further great conversations, building great relationships, networks, and seeing how we can help empower introverts globally.
Yeah, I love that, Godwin. This is David. And what I really think is so amazing is when you started this journey in the last year, you've realized that it's grown to this incredible community. You're not only on Facebook, you've got your podcast, you're now on Clubhouse, which is kind of cool. But it's amazing to be able to see that you're not alone. And there are others out there that have to share that story. And they have to realize that, or at least they've begun to realize that there's incredible power when you know that you're not alone and you can still have the same type of impact, same type of influence as anybody else, including those who call themselves extroverts. Now, what's interesting about it is when I think about introverts and extroverts, I'm an extreme extrovert, and people say, "What does that mean, Dave?" I literally thought when the pandemic came, I was going to go crazy because I needed to see people. I needed to touch people. Is this person real? And I get energized being around people. That's the way I am. I get charged up when I'm with people. And then inversely, I know there are those who would say, well, I'm an introvert, so they get charged when they do a lot of self-reflection, they get time alone, etc. So in 1921, interesting enough, psychoanalyst Carl Jung talked about extroversion and introversion and what that really meant. And he focused more on energy. A lot of times we look at these personality assessments, we talk about personalities, but he focused on energy. And I think energy might be more appropriate when we talk about who an introvert is or who an extrovert is. So he talked about more of energy and how we get energized by being around people, or energized when we're alone and we're able to gain that sense of recovery and get refreshed when we had that inward more solidarity. So in your mind, Godwin, how would you define the terms introvert, extrovert, and ambivert?
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely a really solid question, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there, right, about what these terms even mean in the first place. And when Carl Jung talks about, he coined the terms introversion, extroversion in the first place, right? And this was over 100 years ago or so. And and when he talks about energy levels, I think the working definition for a lot of people is that it is a function of energy levels. Introverts derive a lot of their energy by being by themselves and recharging, right, that way. And extroverts, in the opposite way, they gain energy from being in the presence of others. And then ambivert is, right in the middle, right? And of course, my progression has been, from extreme introvert to more of an ambivert these days, in my opinion, right? So I do, enjoy having great conversations with people and being in the presence of others, as evidenced by the crazy amount of Zoom calls I'm having during the pandemic, time. But at the same time, I still stay true to my introverted roots, in the sense that I actually really enjoy working from home, a lot of the times, and being able to control my environment, right, if you will. And it's nothing new also. I've been working remotely for a lot of the time during the past 4 years anyways. So I've been power Zoom user since 2017, for example, when I finally left Skype, right? So but in any case, that's generally the working definition I use, for both for all, introvert, extrovert, ambivert. But you mentioned something really interesting, earlier, so, speaking with, Dave, for example, right, you, self-identify as being more extroverted, and we had this conversation before. Now, I'm very, very curious about what, what Dan would classify himself. Is he more extroverted, introverted, right? Is there a twin interplay? Like, I'm just curious.
This is Danny. I'm more of the ambient introvert. When we were growing up, Dave and I would be in a room together, and people are like, "How do you know who's Dave and who's Danny?" They said, "Give it a couple minutes, you'll see." So Dave will go room, and I'm fine by myself. And I'm not sure and I'm glad you brought that up, Godwin. I was going to bring that up to you as a question as well. As I grew up in an area where I was happy taking things apart. I loved electronics. I went to school for engineering, graduated with my master's degree in computer science and also an MBA. But I was always happy being a nerd. And you see a lot of nerds in Silicon Valley now becoming CEOs. And so traditionally, I personally would look at a CEO and I would think they have to be like my twin brother, a person who just loves to go around talking to people and being social. And then I started thinking about people like Elon Musk and some of the other people who they're totally happy being by themselves, being alone. But yet, because they're a CEO of the organization, they've been put into a certain spotlight. So let me ask you this question, Godwin, since you were asking Dave and myself this. because there's so much more CEOs now from the tech bubble, SaaS-based companies are all starting to become these billion-dollar organizations now, and they're almost all being led by the founder of the organization, typically an introvert or ambivert. How do these individuals take advantage? How can introverts take advantage of being an introvert and being an effective leader? Because that is something that I've always thought was fascinating.
It's an interesting balance for sure, right? And you're absolutely right. A lot of if you look at, if we're taking the tech as an example, right? A lot of them are led by these founders, CEOs, type of people, right? And more often than not, they possess incredible technical expertise, and these types of individuals lean more towards being introverts, right? You think about a lot of the creators, a lot of the inventors of the world, just throughout history, right? What do they do? Spend a lot of their time on, not necessarily, going out there being known in the town or in the city, like, boasting or about, they're just tinkering in their shop or their home or, things like that, right? So it's just, there's a lot of just, different, dynamics in that, in that interplay, right? And so there, that being said, right, introverts have that, being able to balance that, is that, a lot of these people, right, really value their alone time also, right? And so they don't want to be, say, like, stuck in meetings all the time. And I mean, which they can fill up their entire week with meetings and things like that. But you have people like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, like, they'll deliberately schedule in unstructured thinking time, right, or reading time, right, during their days, and that's where they do their strategic planning, right, a lot of the times, and being able to just work through things and reflect and plan and things like that, so that they can be well equipped or well prepared to do those more public facing things, right, or opportunities or events or things like that. And totally, introverts are well poised to be in leadership positions because they are more deliberate, because they're more thoughtful. Not saying that extroverts can't be leaders as well. They're very good traditional leaders, right? Being outspoken and being assertive and things like that. But I think one of the great traits of an introverted leader is their ability to listen, and not just listen passively, but very actively and very intentionally, right? They'll very, pay attention to you, every word you say, and be able to incorporate, everyone's feedback into, what they're going to do next, or the decision making, or things like that. So absolutely, there's a place for introverted leaders, and we're seeing more and more of them come out to, in prominent leadership positions, even though they may or may not reveal that to people, actually, because a lot of introverts may fake extroverted, right? Sometimes. So
That's a great point. This is David Godwin, and I think what's really interesting about what you've shared and what Dan is saying, it's so true. Dan is an ambivert by all means, and he's just as fine being alone. He's very content being around people, and the truth is, when people meet Dan, they think automatically he's an extrovert. But I am the extreme extrovert, and I don't know if that's because of our makeup as twins, if that happened, but in the Asian culture, he was the firstborn. He was raised in a different way where he had to take on all the responsibility, all the duties. So I think a lot of that led more to his personality as well. Whereas I was the younger, well, even though we're twins, I was a younger, scrappy. I'm gonna do whatever I want, go crazy, and he had to kind of reel me in at times. So there is a balance there. But you talk about all these leaders. I remember interviewing a leader here. He owns an IT firm in Baltimore, and I was working on my a book, and we'll talk about your book down the road here in a moment, if that's okay with you. But we were talking about my book about CEOs and the style of leaders that they are, and he said, Dave, I am by all means an introvert, and he said that I have to muster up courage, and I actually meditate and I really think through what I want to say so I can really come to face with my company because I know that they need to hear my voice. And it was amazing to hear him be that humble, that in tune, like you said earlier, that a lot of introverts are very in tune with the atmosphere. They're very aware what people might be gazing and what they might be thinking, rather, and they're able to give feedback based on being able to read the room. Whereas sometimes extroverts, even though we're more geared towards quote unquote this Western society, maybe the Western culture versus the Eastern culture of businesses, they're willing to be the last ones speaking. They're willing to let others share their thoughts first. And here we champion, no, let's go, let's take over the hill. I'll speak first. Let's make it happen. So when you think about the things you're learning with your groups and the podcasting and all that stuff, what are you learning from these introverts that they may share that they have some advantages perhaps over their extroverted colleagues, you think?
Yeah, I mean, like I just mentioned one, right? Their ability to actively listen, and reflect, right? The other, one is definitely they're able to make decisions more intentionally in a lot of cases. They will deliberately take the time to evaluate all possible alternatives and be able to speak with as many stakeholders as possible before making any decisions. So you rarely see introverts making too many rash decisions, if you will, right? So there's always a purpose or a method to the madness, if you will. And you know uh, and I think, just in general, introverts are really good at building deep relationships as well and having deep conversations, right? So whereas, I know a lot of introverts who absolutely despise small talk. They just want to get right straight to the point, right? Whereas, I obviously believe that small talk does have a place, right? But sometimes especially when we are good friends or just well connected, right? We just want to chat about just things that matter, and that could cover a lot of different things, right? That could cover work, that could cover life, relationships, um, whatever those things may be. And so there's a lot of those strengths that come to the table. And the other thing is also, introverts can be incredible public speakers as well. There's that stereotype that introverts aren't just can't speak at all, right? Which is categorically false a lot of the times. So some of the best public speakers you see in the world today, they are introverts because
Yeah.
because they it's a skill, and a skill, it's not something that you're born with necessarily, right? You're not necessarily born with the gift of gab, if you will, right? And so if you're able to hone it and practice it, right, you're going to be able to be good at it. And that's what a lot of people kind of don't understand, because you know the introvert extrovert spectrum, yes, there is some hereditary component to it, but a lot of it is uh influenced by the environment, right? That you live or you grow up in, right? And of course that uh, there are some cultural dimensions in that as well, right? But by and large, you can really practice that skill. And even for me, right, I needed to just practice and do these podcast episodes over and over and over again, so I am just really comfortable with having great conversations, right? Which is not I'm not that natural at conversing in general, especially when I was younger. It was a skill I had to cultivate over the past few years of just deliberately going out to um, networking events, and these were in person, right? Networking events, and where I didn't know anyone or many people at all, I was able to just have conversations with strangers, and that's how I was able to gain that kind of confidence, right? And being able to prepare for presentations is and you can control the environment as well, right? In that setting. And so I guess, like, if we kind of go back a little bit to the cultural dimension I did mention earlier, right? And so I guess, like, to what extent, this is another question to both of you. So to what extent, right, did your home environment kind of influence the I guess different personality types I guess you may have developed, or were came innately, just because. So I am the older brother of two also, so I'm more introverted. My younger brother of six, he's 6 years younger, but he's more extroverted, right? So to what extent does that, I guess, play, and of course, being for both of you, right, in a I guess West versus East kind of scenario as well, right? Does that dimension play? Because I'm just super curious about that as well.
Well, this is Danny. As the firstborn in my culture, I take care of all the responsibilities for my parents, their household, their bills, their mail, everything, especially when they want to keep their same language and culture. So it's one of those, well, this is English. You go ahead and take care of it. That's kind of been the way I grew up. And so I would say I didn't really feel like I had the time to be outspoken. It was more of militant, just get it done, move on to the next thing. You just do things because that's the right thing to do, if that makes sense, like the loyal, honor thing to do. So I would say that is interesting that you said, as you being the first born as well, how your siblings were more outgoing. And I think that's what was similar to our upbringing as well. Even though Dave and I are only a couple hours apart, I was treated as, okay, you're the one that's going to have all the responsibilities of the family, and Dave, you go do whatever you want, which is weird because we're the same age, right? So that was the way I grew up. So for me, it was all about, I found joy in breaking things and putting it back together so I can understand how things work. No one had to tell me how to do things. No one had to tell me what to do. To me, that was kind of like my way of expressing who I was. And I think that as we grew older, I've had to, in essence, catch up to David and learn how to be more out of myself. Even to this day of our age, as a coach and as a public speaker myself, I will still be more comfortable being by myself. And Dave will be more comfortable being himself, which is going around saying hi to everybody. I do like to network. I do like to get to know people. But at the end of the day, if I had to choose one or the other, I'd rather just be by myself. So I think it was kind of interesting that you and I have something similar in common. Let me ask you this question, since you had asked us this question, is what other ways can introverts impact their organizations? And one way you had mentioned earlier is that they tend to be good listeners. But what other ways can introverts impact their organizations?
Sure. I mean, it's an interesting question because the word organization can encompass a wide diversity of different things, right? It doesn't have to be just a business, for example, right? Or things like that, right? So there's a lot of different dimensions that can come into play, right? Organization can mean, well, big company. Organization can mean startup, that they own, right? Or they're founder of. Organization can mean the government, the organization, in any case, right? There's many different places. And the honest answer for myself is just, it really depends on a lot of different things as well. So whether or not they feel, that they're, a person's role within said organization, right? Are they just entry level, just right in the beginning? Are they more, mid level? Are they more senior executive? Are they, well, the founder of the company? Are they, things like that, right? Because I know, people who are just starting out may not feel comfortable, right, with voicing their opinions and their just ideas and things like that, because they're more in line to either learn more, right, from being employed, or they may feel intimidated, right, to speak out, because they fear for the job security. And so there are different ways, right, to go around that. I'm sure introverts have many different resources in hand, right, to be more, I guess, forceful or outspoken, or being able to share their ideas in a safer environment, whether that's sending emails or notes or Slack messages, or any kind of that thing, right, before meetings, or being able to communicate in writing, right? There's lots of different ways to do that. And I guess being empowered to be able to just have a voice and speak out. I mean, it gets easier as you get older as well, because when you find your specific niche and your specific things that you believe in, and that conviction, right, that can come into play. And even for me, right, I found my conviction through, well, exploring this digital introverts niche, right? I'm able to speak on it because it's my lived experience, but also because I am very passionate about helping others, right? Be emboldened and empowered to just come out and not only say that they are introverted, but you know that they're introverted and they are proud of it, or it is leveraged as a strength. Because so many times introverts can be seen, or introversion can be seen as a weakness, as a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And this is very, very, very much a Western ideal or origin, because a lot of times in the business world, especially, right, extroverts are favored because they're able to articulate their ideas, and it's not trapped inside their heads, right, or things like that. But introverts have very, very wide depth and diversity of thought that need to be shared to the world, or that need to be verbalized sometimes, right? And all it takes is just maybe a little encouragement, right, from empathetic leaders, or others who recognize, right, the power of just the suggestions from introverts, because they actually allows people in the room may not actually have the best ideas, and so
True.
that goes for any single or any type of organization. And when I think about just how introverts can impact organizations, a good way to do that is for leaders to recognize that introversion, extroversion, or just personality is a DEI issue, diversity, equity, inclusion issue. A lot of people think, of it as, from many different axes, of course, through it being an ethnicity thing, or a sexual orientation thing, which is all, and a gender thing, which is all great, right? Of course. But not a lot of people really consider DEI work in terms of diversity of thought or diversity of personality. And that actually is a very good indicator of how people like to enjoy doing work, how they communicate as well, right? And I think those truly impact, a lot of different ways in which people work, right? Sometimes we see pre-pandemic, the trend of increasing trend of open concept offices, right, or just workspaces, environments. I've talked to enough introverts that say they either left corporate or they hate their working environment, right? Because it's too loud, and I keep getting interrupted by Tommy every 5 seconds, that kind of thing, right? And so there's that. Obviously compromises have to be made, but now I think but the pandemic has really forced it to the pendulum swing like too far into the opposite direction, where extroverts are like, so when am I going to see people again in person? So there's in the future, if we think about the future of work specifically, right, a hybrid approach for me is the best approach in a lot of different cases.
So Godwin, this is David, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I'll tell you, with the rise of, I think, awareness, or at least awareness growing within our organizations, we've been talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and studies have shown that a more diverse workforce actually is a more productive and profitable workforce. And you brought up something very important here, is that it's got to be an organization that's balanced, where we're not just praising the extroverted type of mentality, but we're really acknowledging and rewarding great contributions to the organization, regardless of their background and regardless of the type of energy that they display. My wife and I are an interesting balance, and this is where I want to lead with this. How do we take that conversation you just, or the thought you shared? Let's take a little deeper and talk about balance within the organization, having this sense of harmony, working together. Les and I work well together. My wife, Les, and I, we get along so well, and she's an introvert. Okay. And somewhere we have that yin yang effect. We balance each other. I feel in some ways it's an issue of respect. I respect what she brings to the table. I value what she brings to the table. And in turn, I believe she respects what I bring to the table. When there's a need in my mind for her strengths, I gladly take the backstage. I'll back away, letting her lead that charge, and be patient enough to let her develop it in a way that's going to make the most sense for our company, right? And so that's been the challenge for me. I'm learning to become more aware, learning to realize that I've got to value her, learning to realize that if I just let go and in a way surrender, man, our company, what we're doing is going to be even that much more dynamic. And so, in your experience in interviewing all these different leaders, have there been discussions about how do you find that balance? How do you find that harmony? How do we get that yin yang effect at work? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. And so I think to truly achieve that balance and that harmony, if you will, with that yin yang effect, there must be compromises made on both sides. Okay, so there's that's I think the story of just every single conflict in this world. But both sides will have to compromise at some point, right? You're not going to fully uh, get what you want, because if you just think about it, right? If you want completely what introverts want, it would be basically the state of this pandemic where everyone is forced to work, work from home, but obviously with the option of being able to actually see people because there's no pandemic, right? Kind of thing. If if extroverts had their entire way, right, they would just be, just open concept offices everywhere, and people are always just chatting and and being in endless meetings, where in person, online, wherever, right? We're just chatting, we're having a good time, but is work actually being done? We don't know, right? And so compromise is where we meet in the middle. We're able to understand and be completely aware of what the needs of both sides are, right? Introverts being, some alone time, and extroverts having, being in the presence of others, and being, having that balance where, introverts will understand that yes, they may have to be more social at these times of the day, or just, we have these mandatory meetings we have to go to, or these mandatory after work socials, those types of things, a lot of introverts really don't like going to those, but it's good for company bonding or building, or just be getting to know who you work with on a personal level. I think that's supremely important as well, to just increase productivity, because if you don't necessarily have to be friends with everyone at work, right? That's the other thing too, but you probably should get to know them on a personal level, just even a little bit, right? So that you can have a stronger bond, in that way, so you can produce better work. And then for extroverts, right, being able, or being understanding when to now it's time to, for everyone to just focus on their own thing, and to work on X, Y, and Z, right? And we'll reconvene, we'll chat again in a few hours, but for right now, or or maybe we don't even have to have this meeting. Can this meeting be done through an email, or can this meeting be done through Slack messages? It doesn't have to be everyone has to be there in the same time. And then have 2 or 3 extroverts just drone on for an hour, that type of thing. And so that's what I believe, right? Having that mutual understanding, awareness of each other's needs, and being able to compromise on a few key things, and it will help actually for both sides. Especially if people are more extremely introverted or more extremely extroverted, being able to. I think the happiest medium is where everyone can be ambiverts, right? But of course, that's the ideal situation. This world does not does not operate in that way, and so for me as an ambivert, I'm able to understand, truly understand the needs of both sides, and be able to, be in tune with that. But for more extreme introverts or extroverts, um, that's what I would say. And this, not only goes for work, and this goes for relationships as well, especially, how, especially the art of communication as well, whether or not someone prefers to text, or to call, or when to call, I know, some people, I mean, for me, like, I'm not a huge fan of unsolicited phone calls. There's a reason for that. I always like to put every single meeting I have in my calendar. When I get unexpected phone calls, I usually write them off as spam calls, right? So if I have a planned meeting, I know I'm going to talk to you now, right? And for everything else, you can just text or email, right? And so we can just communicate asynchronously. So that's my preference, right? Some other people may prefer, I mean, especially it depends on the type of job you have too, right? Some other people prefer just, all right, we're just gonna, randomly call you up one day, and I expect you to answer at, whatever random hour you're calling me at, that kind of thing. So But where I have, I have times throughout the day where I do have those deliberate, planning, unstructured thinking time, and I don't want that to be interrupted, right? So, that also extends, right? Like I said, to interpersonal relationships. It doesn't have to be of the romantic kind. It can be just, friendships and, relationships with your family, and things like that. Just being able to, make each party aware of the other's needs. That's it.
This is Danny. I appreciate you sharing that, Godwin, because I think similarly, you and I have gone from over the years from being a pure introvert to an ambivert. And I think that sometimes people think you have to be one or the other and that you can't bridge the gap or you can't be in between. And I think that you had mentioned how there's some advantages being an introvert. There's also advantages being an ambivert. And I think that for other people, they need to understand that a little bit more in depth, that it's okay. Organizations, it's okay to have people that are different. It's okay to have people that are unique. I've led sales orgs all over the world and global sales teams. And the last thing I want is everybody to be like David, right? I need some people to be like me. I need some people to be like David. I need some people to be different, because one thing I've realized is when everybody is unique and different, there's actually a better team process that takes place. People work better. And I think that an ambivert leader is an excellent leader as well, because he or she can actually bring in the team better. Not saying I'm a better leader than Dave. I think Dave's a fantastic leader. I just think that each individual is unique and has their strengths and weaknesses. But when you have everybody in the room together, working together, it actually makes the team better. So can you talk a little bit about advantages ambiverts have outside of just what you and I have just spoke about? Because I think ambiverts does a great job of being able to understand what an introvert's going through, but at the same time understand that an extrovert needs to play a little bit. They need to be in a room full of other people. But what other advantages are there to being an ambivert?
Sure. Yes. And aside from just the mutual understanding part, you're able to form relationships with both, both introverts and extroverts relatively quickly and effectively as well, right? Because you can switch between introvert and extrovert language as well. There's a lot of semantics that can play in there, right? So they're able to kind of play in each other's arena, if you will, and be very much attuned to their needs and their and just things like that, right? And being able to have productive discussions, right, with both sides, and being able to even just make compromises, right, for maybe introverted and extroverted teams. And they're basically, it's like that balancing that party, right, in between, I guess, a sea of introverts or a sea of extroverts, right? And you were mentioning Danny, about just the not having a team full of extroverts or not having a team full of introverts as well. I mean, like for example, for me, like I would get along great with the team full of Danny's. Maybe not so a team full of David. No, I'm kidding. But it's just having that diversity, right? And being able to spot and be aware also of who is in the room and who is on teams, and how they can work together effectively, I think is very crucial as well for an ambiverted leader to be able to spot the introverts or the extroverts within organizations without having being explicitly told so. Also, you can very easily, well, maybe not, I shouldn't say that, you can relatively easily spot out, right, the introverts who may not be as participatory in meetings, right, where they're more not laid back, but more just listening, right, in the audience, and maybe not contributing as much, versus the extroverts who are very participatory during meetings, or socials, or things like that, right? And when constructing teams for, say, different projects or different endeavors, and things like that, right, having that good balance, or good mix, and even just in the hiring process too, right? Ambiverts can play a great role in that, because right now, right, a lot of the times, right, people have those strong technical skills that are required for the job, but what's the point of an interview or interviews is not only to know that they're actually human beings and not robots, but also that they are able to work, potentially work well with the team that they're getting hired to, right? If they're a good fit, right? Are there any going to be red flags or communication issues or things like that? And so ambiverts can really, I think, do a good job at picking them out, because they can be attuned to both sides. In that case, right? A lot of the times, people will form teams or be placed into teams based on their technical skill or ability, which is fine, right? It's fine up to a certain extent, but just being able to understand, if team members or employees can even work well, with one another. For example, if you place, and that's kind of like in the same or similar analogy to the all-star principle. If you place a team full of rock stars or all stars, right, in kind of their domain, like they're very confident at this that, they actually may perform worse than a team just having maybe a couple of all-star leaders and a group of great employees, because the group of all-stars are going to fight over who's going to lead or what type of direction they want the project to go in, right? And so and of course, because they're strong-headed, no one's going to yield or not many people are going to yield, right? And so just having that awareness too for ambivert leaders, and then avoiding the opposite as well, right? Having a team that has no leader also, right? And especially those groups where no one's going to take initiative because the group is full of introverts, or or that group where no one wants to be in charge, because they don't want to be put in the spotlight, right? And I'm talking about a group of introverts as well. So I think those dynamics, right, in anything is important to organize, and I think that leaders have a especially ambivert leaders have a good opportunity to be able to be very good at doing that, or not. I mean, people live and learn. So
Yeah, that's so true. This is Danny, by the way. I want to continue that thought real quick, because when we think about inviting people in, and this is where I really want you to help our audience out. What tips can you provide on how to invite people in who are introverts and get them involved? One thing I like to think about is that it's okay to be comfortable with silence. Sometimes extroverts, they don't like it. They want to answer like this. They like, look, I'm ready to move. Let's get moving. But they don't sometimes understand that silence does not mean that the person is not actively engaging or involving with you. They're formulating their thoughts. They're trying to be wise in what they say and how they say it, instead of just spitting it out. And not saying that extroverts don't think about what they do. They tend to have already formulated their thoughts well ahead of time because they've been really ready to go. But introverts tend to be, they're comfortable in their silence, right? So Dave always has this thing that he talks about called the power of the pause. That pausing is great. It allows your audience to re-engage, allows your audience to stop, to think about what's going on, and sometimes snap them back out of what they were thinking about. Maybe they weren't paying attention. So the power of the pause is one of Dave's favorite things. But what thoughts and advice can you provide for our audience on how to invite people who are introverts into your group or into your meeting or into your conversation?
yeah, I love this question because it is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time, obviously, and I have very good textbook examples of what not to do in this case, especially when I was younger. A lot of the times people, I mean, of course, it was very well intentioned, but when I was younger, a lot of times, and I was, I just wanted to be left alone a lot of the times, right? And people found that weird or uncomfortable, right? In the sense that they may have seen me as antisocial or just not friendly or that type of thing. But in reality, I was just more comfortable with being alone. I didn't necessarily need to have the biggest friend group out there. right? I didn't necessarily have to, engage with a lot of people to feel very comfortable, right? I was very comfortable by being by myself, and it was not weird, or it was not out of the ordinary, right? When I was younger, I mean, aside from just, a lot of the extracurricular activities my parents signed me up for after school, the three main things that I did were go to school, do homework, play video games. And that was the greatest existence I could ever imagine. And then, once you come into adulthood, realize, oh, you actually have responsibilities. But in any case, a lot of the times people would say, oh, why are you so quiet? Get out of your shell, speak up. Why are you so quiet? So a lot of these command like interjections or things like that. I mean, I didn't want to. Like, if I didn't have anything to say, I'm not going to say it, right? I'm not going to, um, you know, spew out words for the sake of filling the air with words, that kind of type of thing, right? And that goes back to the, um, to the notion of being or the being comfortable in silence, or practicing the art of just reveling in silence, because a lot of times people feel very uncomfortable actually, being in silence in the presence of others, especially. So I'm just practicing it right now, right? So I just practice it for like, a couple of seconds, and I was very deliberate. Um, and because they feel like the need to fill the air with noise again, with words and things like that. It's just uncomfortable. But having those pauses can really dramatically, increase, connection between maybe speaker and audience, or friend to friend, or things like that, right? And it can have it drives silence is actually a very telling sign of just the message you want to convey, right? A lot of times, and things like that, right? And if introverts, so here's the thing, right? Try not to push introverts to too much out of their comfort zone. I mean, a good healthy dose of, hey, why don't you try coming with me to this networking event, or things like that, right? But don't push them too much over the edge, because then they'll um, won't be as responsive to you, moving forward. Let them discover the just being more comfortable, right, with showing their whole selves, or bringing their whole selves to work, or to life, or to other situations. For me, I mean, it was very natural progression. It was, albeit it was a bit slow, right? I took my entire childhood and even a bit of my adulthood to be this comfortable, right, by being able to reveal my story, and do a podcast, and do all this online content, and things like that, right? But it was a very gradual process. I just got more comfortable by being in my own skin. Self-awareness is huge in this process. The journey of self-discovery. Who am I? What do I stand for? Where do I want to go? What are my strengths and weaknesses, and things like that, right? If you're crystal clear on all of these, and I'm not saying this is a very easy activity to do either, right? This, for some people, this may take an entire lifetime, right? Some people, oh, they find that, oh, maybe 50s, 60s, that kind of thing. Oh, I finally discovered what I'm actually interested in, right? And they go, a lot of people go into all kinds of different careers, career paths, or just opportunities, things like that, without knowing truly what they like or enjoy. Of course, a lot of that can be based circumstantially, right? It is a privilege to actually even think about that in the first place, right? When you don't have your other basic needs met as per Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But I think it's a good exercise just in general, to be able to know who you are, and then you're able to um be more, say, comfortable, or participatory, or just know what you enjoy or like to do also, right? And have the power of saying no as well. I think a lot of introverts may feel like, oh, I'm not going to be nice or polite if I say no to, going to this dinner party or engagement or that type of thing, right? Don't, again, it goes back to the message, don't force introverts to do if, things if they don't want to just do it, right? Give them the space and the time to be able to discover the joy of doing X, Y, and Z by themselves if they want to, right? I mean, if they want to just stay at home instead of going to that party, just let them be, honestly.
Godwin, this is David, and I'm going to say that I know you and Dan were joking and jesting here, but I don't know if I could be in a room with just all extreme extroverts either. So I'm glad that I could be a part of the team, the party, and I think even for my own life, it's just amazing to be able to see the balance that I have with my wife and the balance I have with certain teams that I've been around. And what I've learned is that as a leader, you have to be cognitive of every single person that is under your care or everybody that's on your team, because the more you're in tune with them, the more productive they're going to be and the greater impact the overall team's going to have. And so I think that's amazing that you were able to share that. Let me ask you this. You also wrote a book called Digital Introverts: Why Today's Most Successful Individuals Harness Introversion to Thrive. I love this. And I'm going to ask, is this a continued thought process you had when you were building the podcast, when you were thinking about the different social media platforms you were on, how to highlight these incredible leaders? And as I mentioned earlier, again, I find that some of our best clients would say they were skewed more towards being an introvert or introversion. But tell me about the book real quick. And was this born as a continuation of your work?
Sure. So, like I was saying right at the very beginning, now this conversation is coming full circle again, right? The podcast started because of the book,
Oh,
actually,
okay.
and so it's been obviously, very much an evolving project and process, right? And I'm still in the thick of just writing it, and it will, I mean, the amount of content just increases exponentially every single podcast interview I have. And so now it's a problem of curation and consolidation, right, of all those different incredible stories into what kinds of lessons we can learn about the role of introverts in the digital age and how they're able to not only survive but also thrive, right? And so that, of course, the title indicates as much. And that as of this recording, right, I'm not entirely sure about when it's going to be released or when is it going to be finished or things like that. But I put it out as a project or a thing I'm doing to the world to not only have that, I guess, public accountability in the sense of, hey, where is that book? Because I do get questions like that from time to time. And so I was like, okay, I might as well, I need to finish this, right? But also it's a great way to as a promise of a great future resource, right? I see it as a legacy item as well for any really creation, right, that you put out or put forth in the world. There is an aspect of legacy that you're going to leave, right? It doesn't matter if only 3 people listen to your podcast, or it doesn't matter if you have only 3, sell 3 copies of your book, right? No matter what, those types of content, especially the podcast, especially say like an ebook or that type of thing, is going to be added to the entire canon of the world's knowledge base, right? On the internet. I mean, the internet is a very gigantic place, as we know, and so by being able to put my work out there, I'm able to not only impact the introverts of today, and maybe in the near future, but always think about what type of impact or legacy I'm going to leave to that introverted child who is living in the year 3000, right? And I know, like, some of the people are like, why are you thinking out for so long? This is a bit ridiculous. But for me, like, I'm a huge futurist as well, and I like to think about how things will change or evolve, or I'm very future oriented. That's why, I mean, that's why the podcast isn't called Analog Introverts. It's called Digital Introverts for a reason, right? I'm always very forward facing. I used to dwell a lot about my mistakes of the past and what in history. I mean, I also love history as a subject as well. I like to learn about where we came from, what had happened, how to avoid the mistakes of the past, repeating those, right? But at the same time, I'm very much a forward-thinking person. What types of transformational, technologies or paradigm shifts are we going to experience in the future? And I learn to be more of an optimist as well, right? Because I am a huge pessimist back in the day. Thought that the world is not good, and we have lots of problems in the world, which we do, of course. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but if you take a look at in the entire grand scheme of things, right? I think just in just evolution of humanity and human progress, we are actually living in very prosperous times, relatively speaking. And of course, yes, there are still a lot of huge problems, right? I'm going to say that again, but there's a lot of great things that are going to be in the future and coming. No matter what the doomsday people are saying. But anyways, right? That's why and think about that little kid in the year 3000 who is going to read my book or listen to my podcast and be able to still learn from that, right? I take the look of, take of the most ancient texts we have right out there. We have the readings of all the great Greek philosophers were still around. In writing, of course, they're long dead, but their writing still impacts how we think about things nowadays. I think about How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That book is still a bestseller even after 100 something years after it was written.
Yep.
Now that's what I'm talking about in terms of legacy and impact, right? So
Yep. Well, Godwin, this is Dave, and I'm gonna tell you, I love that ability to say, what's the future gonna look like? And it's not about where I am now, it's about where I want to see my work, my experience, my thoughts, and how it's going to impact the next generation. So I want to thank you for sharing that. I think whether you are a introvert, an extrovert, or in my twin's case, I guess more you as well, an ambivert, everyone needs to feel appreciated. Everyone needs to feel valued, and everyone needs to feel heard. And if you learn to embrace your energy level, who you are, what you are, and then you learn to see the larger picture of how you can impact the team, then I think the overall organization, without a doubt, will become a more vibrant, productive, and profitable organization. So today, I want to thank Godwin Chan for joining our program today. I want to thank him for sharing about his growth and journey as an introvert, about his platforms with the Digital Introverts Podcast, and the fact that the three of us could be in this room, have laughs, get along, and realize that there's great strengths and value from learning to listen to each other and working together. So Godwin Chan, thank you for joining the Twins Talking Up podcast. And I look forward to you and I doing more work together in the future.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, everyone. We look forward to seeing you on the next